Hello everyone, this is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to continue our study of paper 105, Deity and Reality. And we're on section 3, the 7 absolutes of infinity, and that's on page 1155.5. Let's say a little prayer and we'll get started tonight. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight that we might study this wonderful revelation. Please open our hearts and minds that we might learn something tonight and share it with others. We thank you for the opportunity to learn and serve as you would have us do, and it be your will that we do so. We thank you and we give you the praise in your Son's name, Jesus, my holy heaven. Amen.
Amen.
No.
All right. The 7 absolutes of infinity. I guess I'll start out as usual. The 7 absolutes of infinity. The 7 prime relationships within the I Am eternalize as the 7 absolutes of infinity. But though we may portray reality origins and infinity differentiation by a sequential narrative, in fact, all 7 absolutes are unqualifiedly and coordinately eternal. It may be necessary for mortal minds to conceive of their beginnings, but always should this conception be overshadowed by the realization that the 7 absolutes had no beginning. They are eternal, and as such, always have been. The 7 absolutes are the premise of reality. They have been described in these papers as follows. And I have a little picture of these first. The 7 absolutes of infinity. And on the slide we have the Father, Son, and the Spirit, paradise itself, and then the deity absolute or the qualified absolute, the unqualified absolute, and the universal absolute. Now keep in mind, all of these are within the scope and focus of the I Am. There never has been a time when there hasn't been these 7 absolutes, but these 7 absolutes exist and live within the being of the I Am. So you can't really separate the absolutes from God the Father or the I Am, right? It's a pretty neat thing. And another point I want to bring up that Rodney sent me a little email about this week, which I want to make sure that everybody understands. I think I confused people last week when they had a slide of the Father and the Spirit together. But you see the 3 circles there? Rodney pointed out to me that every one of these slides, when you see these, the first center circle is the Father, the next is the Son, and the third is the Infinite Spirit. And when you see these outside different slides, they have pretty much the same size. The reason I'm saying that is last week I think I confused everybody when it showed a slide of the Father and the Spirit, and I said something along the lines of the Spirit of the Father, and really in reality what I was talking about is the Infinite Spirit there.
Yeah, Roger, that was the meeting before last.
Oh, before last. Sorry, Rodney. Yeah, it was before last. But I wanted to point that out tonight to clarify that, because Rodney was right. When you see these circles outside this, they are pretty much the same in each slide, about the same size.
The same dimensions.
Same dimensions, in other words. So, but thanks for pointing that out for me, Rodney. I want to make sure I mentioned that so that if anyone was confused, that
Yeah, no problem.
we straightened it out. All right?
I'm just glad I was reading it.
Yeah, yeah. Millie, would you like to take the next slide, please?
Are you talking to me?
Yes. No.
Number 1. The first source sentence, the person of deity and one deity calls. God, the universal Father, creator, composer, and upholder, universal love, eternal spirit, and infinite energy, potential of all potentials, and source of all activity, stability of all static
and dynamism of all changes, source of pattern and father of persons. Collectively, all seven absolutes equivalent to infinity, but the universal in himself actually is infinity.
Infinite.
Do you hear all the noise?
Yeah, that's a reverb from somebody not muting their mic, probably. It's giving us feedback. So.
Should I try my headphones?
No, I think you're fine. It will probably come and go, Millie. Let's see if we have any more trouble with anybody else reading. So as people pop their mic on and off, we should figure out and clear it up here and there. Okay, the first source and center, the first person of deity, God the Father. God the Father is the essence of the what? The I am. And within the I am, we all have our being, and everything lives within that being, the I am. And so, when you think about God the Father, the first person deity is the primal, not deity and non-deity pattern. In other words, the Father is the pattern for all the absolutes, and that includes the deity absolute, the unqualified absolute, and the universal absolute. Because God created these beings, in essence, and they live within Him, and they always have been with Him, right? Because they are part of Him, all right? And He is the first person of universal love, eternal spirit, and infinite energy, and all the potentials that are all ever possible come from the I Am, or the God the Father, the first source and center. And He's the source of everything out in the universe. He's the pattern for not only paradise, but all that comes after paradise. All right, so when you talk about the first source and center, you're talking about the first person of deity, and you're always talking about God the Father, right? Outside of the Trinity. All right?
Roger, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does it teach us in the Urantia book that God the Father created the Son and the Spirit and the paradise? And
Well, yeah, it does teach us that in essence, Rodney, but and that's because we have a finite beginning. We can't even conceive of there not being something of no beginning, right?
what I'm reading in this is that the seven absolutes have always been.
Always been and always will be. That's correct.
They weren't created.
That's right, that's correct. But they come from God the Father. So what they're trying to explain to us is the record of history. There is no history actually of the beginning of the eternal Son, the infinite Spirit, or even paradise, right? But the way they explain to it how they came into being, and the other absolutes, the way they came into being, it was a thought and an action of God the Father, or the I Am, the first source and center. So you could conceive, if it's explained like that there may have been a beginning point for those beings being alsos, but it's considered so far back it's an eternity, right? Or infinity. So, it's hard to understand. It's what they call in the book a paradox, right? They explain to us that they had a beginning, but in reality they really didn't. So that's what makes it a paradise. It's this and it's not. So maybe when we get up to the Melchizedeks on the mansion worlds, they can make it clearer to us. But this is the best way they knew how to explain it to us, I guess. All right, let's move on to the next one. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Okay. 2. The second source and center, second person of deity, the eternal and original Son, the absolute personality realities of the I Am, and the basis for the revelation of I Am personality. No personality can hope to attain the universal Father except through His eternal Son. Neither can personality attain to spirit levels of existence apart from the action and the aid of this absolute pattern for all personalities. In the second source and center, spirit is unqualified, while personality is absolute.
So what they're telling us is our personality comes from God the Father, but our spirit, which makes us a son, comes through the eternal Son. That makes sense? So two parts of our being, our personality and our spirit, which is part of our soul, actually comes through the eternal Son, and you cannot recognize your own personality junction with God the Father without the realization of your spirit, of yourself, through the eternal Son. Okay? A little bit complicated, isn't it?
Well, if you put a slash there and say universe and mother, it's more
Yeah.
palatable.
Yeah. It's like God gives us a personality, but our creation part of us comes through the eternal Son. Actually comes through the Son's Son, which is the local universe, our Mother Spirit and our Michael Son, right? That's how we get created. All right. And then the next one they go to, notice here, is the Paradise Source and Center, not the Infinite Spirit, right? Okay, let's go on. Stephen, would you take the next one?
All right. 3. Paradise Source and Center. Second, not deity pattern. Eternal isles of paradise. Basic for the realization, revelation of I am the foundation for the establishment of gravity, control throughout the universe. Regarding all actualized, non-spiritual, impersonal, and non-volitional reality, paradise is the absolute paradise. This experience energy is related to the universal Father, to the absolute personality of the Mother Son. So is all cosmic energy, gravity, and gravity control of the first source and center, through the absolute pattern of Paradise Isle. Paradise is not in space. Space exists relative to paradise. And the prosody of modern motion is determined through paradise relation. The eternal isle is absolute creation. All of the organizing unity is in the eternal motion. In all space, only the presence of the unqualified absolute is quantity.
Quiescent.
Okay, and the unqualified coordinate with paradise. Paradise is the focus of space. The unqualified pervades, and all of existence has its being within this domain.
Okay, so the Isle of Paradise is the gravity and the pattern for all the universes, right? All the way out through all the outer space levels. And it's controlled or made possible through the unqualified absolute, which is a non-deity function, right? So paradise is not a personality. It is basically a central place where all matter makes its existence possible. And I got a picture that kind of helps explain this a little bit. So if we look at the next slide, we see here in the center is paradise, right? All right. Basically, all of this area here, which includes the 7 super universes, right, is considered the grand universe, right? All of this together is considered the master universe when you add the outer space levels and everything together. So we have the the grand universe, which includes the 7 super universes. It includes the 21 spheres which surround paradise, and these are the spheres of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. There's 7 of each. Okay? Then outside that is the 7 rings of Havona. And we're talking about in that 1 billion worlds in these 7 world spheres of Havona. We go through all of these on our way to paradise, right? Every single sphere. All right. Then right outside of Havona is an inner gravity belt, which is this one right here, the thinner one, and an outer gravity belt, which is larger. And these 2 gravity belts hold the universes outside of paradise and Havona away to keep them from collapsing into Havona in paradise. Okay? And then outside of that are the 4 outer space levels, which are in development. Now, if you look at this, you think everything would be a big mumbo jumbo, but it's not. Okay? We have 2 different things going on here. This is a slide of space respiration again. And right in the center here is paradise, right? And surrounding... Huh?
I'm sorry to interfere, but you're so out of focus, I can't see what you're trying to explain.
Put your hand in front of that.
I see the picture now, but not where Roger is.
Okay.
You're correct, but go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. I can walk up here and talk
Oh, you are there.
Yeah.
I see where you're pointing.
Yeah, this is, it does this sometimes. See if this straightens this out. Did it straighten it out at all?
No?
No? Okay, well just look at the slide and I'll try
It
to...
just has a picture of the.
Yeah. If you look at the slide, you'll see right in the center of it is paradise, and surrounding that is and outside that is the what they call pervaded space. See all this area here? This includes the 7 super universes, and it includes the 4 outer space levels. But notice it's almost got an hourglass shape on the sides and above it and below it, right? And what this does is it balances out the entire master universe. Okay? As one of these sections goes out, the other of the sections come in. And this is where space respiration comes from, and gravity. Okay? So above paradise is a big vertical reservoir of space. And below, the same thing, a vertical reservoir of space. And in between these reservoirs of space on both sides and top and bottom is what they call mid-space zones, and there is nothing in those mid-space zones. It's empty, basically. Okay? So this...
Ultimatons?
Yeah, there's probably ultimatons and gravity and things like that, but there's no physical matter. And what this mid-space zone does is allows the expansion and contraction of the 2 sides. And these 2 sides are so humongous we can't even perceive of them. You know, you're talking about the entire material master universe. That's all 7 super universes and all 4 outer space levels right now. But that gives you kind of an idea of how large the master universe is, and how paradise is the center point that controls all matter and all gravity. Gravity starts, I believe, I'm going to say this backwards probably. I believe gravity starts at the bottom and comes back up and goes back into the top. Time does the opposite. Time starts at the top and goes around and comes back into the bottom. Okay?
Did you say that mid-space zones?
Mid-space zones.
There's nothing in them? I thought there was no place where there was empty space.
That's true in the perverted space of the master universe, Lily. That is true. There's no place that there's empty space. But we're talking about that's why they call it the mid-space zone, because there's nothing in it. It's the area in which space can expand and contract into, like a balloon, almost. You follow me? And there's 4 of those mid-space zones, basically, that go all the way around paradise.
This is paradise. This does not include the 7 super universes.
Yes, it does. It includes the 7 super universes. If you look at this picture, this center part is paradise.
green.
The green.
Green is paradise.
Yeah. And if you look at right outside of paradise is like a black area. And that would be the area where Havona would be in all the satellites of paradise. Now, then, right outside that would be the dark gravity belts, the inner and the outer, right in here. And then we start the 7 super universes, and they would be closest in. And as you go out, there will be another, the first outer space level, the second, third, and fourth. But this space right here, it says pervaded space. This is where we live. And this is hard to imagine, but this pervaded space goes all the way around like a big donut. Okay? So when that big donut expands, it gets flatter. As it comes in, it gets wider. So if you could imagine the pervaded space like a beach donut, if you pressed it in at the sides, it's going to get higher on the top and bottom, and when you let it out, it's going to expand back out on the sides. It's the same principle. And that's basically how space respiration works. Now this process takes 1 billion years each direction. So, it's not something that happens overnight. I mean, we can't even conceive of 1 billion years, right? But I wanted you to see this in relation to paradise itself. All right?
Roger, one of the sentences that was read is paradise is not in space.
It's
And I
not.
just can't wrap my head around it.
Paradise is not in space, Rodney. Space is determined by the location of paradise. Okay? So paradise is so enormous. When you see these pictures, they show paradise as a small little disc. Because if they showed paradise as it actually was, it's actually bigger than all 7 super universes with the rings of Havona. So there's no way you could put that on a slide. It's just impossible. Our minds can't conceive of something that big. So paradise itself is a humongous amount of room. We're talking, billions and billions and billions of light years across. They say in one place in the book that if you took all the inhabitants of, let's see, how does this go, of the 7 super universes and took them immediately to paradise, it would only take up like 1% of paradise. So paradise is pretty big. It's got lots of space. They're not going to run out of rooms before we get there, right? All right.
Now, I just can't understand how paradise cannot.
Well, they say that because everything surrounds paradise, Rodney, and moves. So, and paradise is not a moving object. It stays constantly in the same place. So that's why there's no time in paradise. We determine time by the movement of space. Okay? And if there's no movement of paradise, there would be no time in paradise. You see what I'm saying?
I want paradise to be somewhere.
It is somewhere. We just can't see it. If we took all of our telescopes and pointed them at paradise and went through the billions of light years to get there, okay? Even an adjuster takes 117 hours, I think it is, or days. I think it's 117 days to leave the Father's world, the Bennington outside paradise on one of the Father's worlds. It takes it that long to get all the way out to our planet. And we're going to go over that in the paper in a couple of weeks here. But that's a long way for something that has no concept of time to get there, right? And that's one of the fastest moving things in the universe is an adjuster. So even they have to traverse space, and they do it over the gravity circuits. Okay, so even takes them a while to get there. So it's a hard concept to understand that paradise does not move, and so there's no time in paradise. So that's a hard concept. It's one of those paradoxes I was talking about earlier tonight, you know, just to think about it. Right? Okay, let's go on to the third source and center, number 4.
For the third source and center, third person of deity, conjoint actor. Infinite integrator of paradise cosmic energies with the spirit energies of the eternal Son. Perfect coordinator of the motives of will and the mechanics of force. Unifier of all actual and actualizing reality. Through the ministrations of his manifold children, the infinite spirit reveals the mercy of the eternal Son, while at the same time functioning as the infinite manipulator, forever weaving the pattern of paradise into the energies of space. The same self,
Conjoint actor.
the self-same conjoint actor, this God of action, is the perfect expression of the limitless plans and purposes of the Father Son, while functioning himself as a source of mind and the bestower of an intellect upon the creatures of a far-flung cosmos.
Okay, if you remember the slide on well, you don't have to remember. I'll bring this down for just a second if I can. Here we go. Remember that the conjoint actor up here is the God of action. You see that right there? It says action. That's what they're talking about here. So it's the conjoint actor that takes the matter, all the spirit, all the circuits, everything having to do with anything material, mindal, or spirit, and brings it together and makes it all function as reality. Okay? And it's the children of the conjoint actor, or the infinite spirit, that reveals the personal or the personality mercy of the eternal Son, while at the same time weaves the patterns of paradise into space and the energies of space to make things come into being. Okay? So this is really important, without the eternal Son, which is the eternal Mother Spirit, and the infinite Spirit who creates all the local universe Mother Spirits, there would be no creation with the Creator Sons, because it takes both the infinite Spirit's actor, which is the local universe Mother Spirits, to act with the Creator Sons to create the local universes. Okay? And it's through the Creator Sons that demonstrate the love and mercy of the Eternal Son, right? But it's the infinite Spirit which gives us the Holy Spirit of the local universe Mother Spirit that connects to us personally in our material minds and bodies. Okay, so it's all interweaved together. So you can see how none of these things would be possible without the conjoint actor, right?
Roger,
Yeah.
I always thought of the conjoint actor or the infinite spirit as being, more feminine, but they expressed it in himself as a he.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a misnomer because they're trying to communicate with sex creatures, right?
I understand that.
Yeah, I don't think you can even think of the infinite Son and the infinite Spirit is either he or she, because they have a function of both masculinity as a leader and merciful type thing,
Right, exactly. I understand.
and a female side, which is the mother of creating all creatures, including us, and all the other creatures of the universe, not just us, but all creatures of the universe. Plus, when they talk about the servants or the beings of the infinite spirit, which is all the angel corps, right? They speak of them as all as she's, right? Because it's the mothering side of the infinite spirit that creates all these beings to help nurture us along. So we think of mothers in the physical sense as nurturing beings, and that's what they're trying to relate, is these spirits are the nurturing side of the universe, right? They help us out, they help us along. When we get to the mansion worlds, we actually see them, they accompanying us through all this process and stuff, keep us from being lonely or dismayed and things like that. So they're the ministers of all the universes, right? And that is a female part of, if you think about it, all of our physical reality. The nurturing part of our physical reality is mostly female, if you think about it. So calling the infinite spirit a mother infinite spirit is correct, right? But when you talk about the eternal Son, the infinite Creator Son, we still have a mothering part of Him, because He was actually part of the creation of all the beings of the universe, where the infinite Spirit created many of her own. All right? Make sense?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. It will grow on you, believe it or not. All right, let's move on. The deity absolute. Okay, 5, the deity absolute. The causational, potential, personal possibilities of universe reality, the totality of all deity potential, the deity absolute, is the purposive qualifier of the unqualified absolute. In other words, it gives it the deity part. And non-deity realities, all physical reality. The deity absolute is the qualifier of the absolute and the absolutizer of the qualified, the destiny inceptor. And if we look at the next slide, I'll go over what the deity absolute is again. The deity absolute, also known as what? The qualified absolute. The absolute has no beginning, it is endless, timeless, and contains no space. The absolute transcends time, space, and infinity, and eternity, and the ultimate, out into the future. Absolute of potentiality, activator of potentials, absolutes of infinity, limitless, timeless, spaceless, boundless, and measureless, truly infinite. The qualified absolute unifies the unqualified absolute in the universal absolute. That's the three absolutes. Majeston was created due to this merging with the universal and unqualified absolute. And it's a member of the triadity of potentiality, what will happen in the future. And it over-controls all material reality. Do y'all remember who Majeston was? All spirit reflection is controlled through Majeston. Right? This is how the beings out on the edge of the universe communicate all the way to paradise in an instant. It's through Majeston. Okay? Alright. You kind of beat these to death, but you're going to keep beating them to death. Alright. Millie, would you take the next one? 6?
6, the unqualified absolute. Static, reactive, and abeyant. The unrevealed cosmic infinity of the I Am. Totality of non-deified reality, and finality of all non-personal potential. Space limits the function of the unqualified, but the presence of the unqualified is without limit. There is a concept periphery to the master universe, but the presence of the unqualified is limitless. Even eternity cannot exhaust the boundless quiescence of this non-deity absolute.
Okay. Just as the deity absolute instills all deity to all beings that are deified, The unqualified absolute basically expands through all space, even through all four outer space levels, is only limited by the pattern of space, but he is the potential of all things that could happen outside the four outer space levels even. So the unqualified absolute starts in paradise and goes all the way out. It's everywhere. Remember that the unqualified and the qualified and the universal absolute all live within whom? The I am, right? So this makes God's presence everywhere, always, right? Both the deified and the non-deified. All right. Let's go to the next one. Hang on there, give me a second. So, universe. Let's go through this slide first. Now this is from the index again. The unqualified absolute. Let me go ahead and read this, and then we'll Stephen can take our next one, or Rodney can take the next one. The unqualified absolute, existential things simply are. Okay, this is the unqualified absolute we were just talking about. The unqualified absolute is existential, positive reality. An absolute of potentiality. Everything that's potentially possible in the future involves whom? The unqualified absolute. It's a devoid of personality. It's not a personal being. What makes it a personality? The deity absolute, right? All right. The infinite capacity, the I am, static, reactive, limitless, timeless, spaceless, balanced, and measureless, truly infinite. The repository of static potentials, anything that's possible, uncreated universes, revealer, regulator, and repository of all that has paradise as its source. Totality of non-personal, extra-divine, and undeified reality, unpredictable in reactions, unrevealed cosmic infinity of the I am, an absolute of infinity. Emergent energy must be liberated from the unqualified absolute. The matter subject of cosmic over-control controls everything, may be activated by second experiential trinity. The member of the triodity of potentiality, the master force organizers, manipulate primordial space forces of the unqualified absolute. And outer space is the domain of the unqualified. Okay? Before anybody else goes out there.
When you read that, and
Huh?
you come to numbers, you don't read numbers, you just put words in there.
Yeah, these are all references from in the book, put all together. These are all the references for the unqualified absolute in the book. All right, so that makes these great study slides. If you want to go through that slide and look up every single one of those, it'll mention the unqualified in those references. That's why there's little numbers there. Okay. All right, Rodney, would you take the next one? 7?
Yes, 7. The universal absolute. Unifier of the deified and the undeified. Co-relator of the absolute and the relative. The universal absolute, being static, potential, and associative, compensates the tension between the ever-existent and the uncompleted.
So it basically brings the qualified absolute and the unqualified absolute together. Okay, it's the glue that makes them all work together, right? Because they're so totally different, one is about deity and one is about not, this brings those functions together, right? Remember, all three of them, it takes all three of them to make up the absolutes. All right, and I got a slide again on the universal absolute. We've been over this slide before, but I want to read it again. The more you hear it, the better off. And I'll read this one again. The universal absolute, an absolute of potentiality. So everything potentially to happen involves the universal absolute. It's an inevitability. The final function, they got a final function of the Trinity. It's a question mark. They don't know for sure. The infinite upholder of the I am, self-associative and with all the absolutes, at limitless, timeless, spaceless, boundless, and measureless, truly infinite. Energy proves existence of the unqualified absolute. Functions and actions of the universal absolute. Alternate opposing precessions of space levels, part of gravity technique. This is part of the space respiration. Compensates tensions between the ever-existent and uncompleted. Makes material universes cosmically possible. May be activated by the second experiential Trinity. It's a member of the Trinity of Trinities, member of the triity of potentiality, and it's the physical controller may be reactive to the universal absolute. Trinity membership is the unqualified absolute and deity absolute unified in the universal absolute. All right. So it's a glue that brings everything together. All right, Stephen, would you take the next one?
All right. The seven absolutes of infinity constitute the beginnings of reality. As mortal mind would regard it, the first source and center would appear to be antecedent to all absolutes. But such a postulate, however helpful, is invalidated by the eternity coexistence of the Son, the Spirit, the three absolutes, and paradise island.
All seven of these being always have been, always will be, right? Within the I am. All right.
Roger,
Yeah.
would it be fair to say, that as far as the deity, absolute, and the unqualified absolute, would that be the same as maybe like yin and yang?
The what? The yin and yang, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, in essence. Yeah, they're opposites of each other, but they make up the whole, right? What makes them make up the whole is the universal absolute, right? So you can think of it as a yin and a yang and something else, right? Call it yin and yang and ding or something, I don't care. But that's basically what it boils down to. It's three things that revolve around each other, right? Inseparable, really. All right. I think they separate these concepts for us to make it more palatable for us to understand more than anything else. And running through this one time, no one can understand it the first time through, unless you're a genius, I guess. It takes many, many times and much study to start getting these concepts to gel into a whole, you know? And having read the books, gosh, since 1973, who knows how many times I've been through this book, at least once a year. So doing it that many times, it starts gelling. Every time you read it, it adds something to it, and all the puzzle pieces start to come together, and it helps your understanding of it. So, you know, when you read this the first time through, and you've never read anything like this, it's like gobbledygook to you. It really is. You know, that's just the way it is. All right. No matter how clear the Melchizedeks have tried to make it to us, we're just not that smart, right? All right. Who's next?
It is a truth that the absolutes are manifestations of the I am, first source and center. It is a fact that these absolutes never had a beginning, but are coordinate eternals with the first source and center. The relationships of absolutes in eternity cannot always be presented without involving paradoxes in the language of time and in the concept patterns of space. But regardless of any confusion concerning the origin of the seven absolutes of infinity, it is both fact and truth that all reality is predicated upon their eternal existence and infinity relationships.
And that's what it all boils down to. This is what we all live and have our being in, right? The I am. And it's just parts of the same thing. Okay, now we're going to get even more confusing. Hopefully not. All right. 4. Unity, duality, and triunity. The universe philosophers postulate the eternity existence of the I Am as the primal source of all reality. And concomitant therewith, they postulate the self-segmentation of the I Am into primary self-relationships, the 7 phases of infinity. And simultaneously with this assumption, the third postulate, the eternity appearance of the 7 absolutes of infinity, and the eternalization of the duality association of the 7 phases of the I Am and these 7 absolutes. And what are they talking about here? I can break this down to a certain point, but at some point they have to just kind of gel together. Okay? So we take the primal source of all reality, the I Am, right? And then we take that I Am as a self-segmentation. What are they talking about? He segments himself into the 7 primary self-relationships. What are they talking about? The 7 relationships are God the Son, God the Spirit, paradise, right? And the 3 absolutes, the deity absolute, the unqualified absolute, and the universal absolutes. So that's a duality relationship, right, with each one of those. Okay? And then they go on to say there's a third postulate, a triunity involved, right? And this eternity appearance of the 7 absolute of infinity and the eternalization of the duality association of the 7 absolutes with the I Am and the 7 absolutes together. So we go from a unity of all 7, right? We have a duality of each one and its relationship with the I Am. And then we have a triunity of all these relationships within each other, right? Like the Paradise Trinity, that's a triunity, right? Like joining the 3 absolutes, the deity, the qualified, and the unqualified, that's another triunity, right? So we have these relationships all built on this postulate of the single thing of God the Father or the I Am, right? And that's where this unity, duality, and triunity all come together. Now remember when we studied earlier the triunities, there's 15 of them. They show us 7, but they don't show us the other 8, right? Because they're not something that we would readily understand, probably. These are tough enough, right? All right. Let's go on since I talked my head off again. Millie, would you take the next one?
The self-revelation of the I Am thus proceeds from static self through self-segmentation and self-relationship to absolute relationships. Relationships with self-derived absolutes. Duality becomes thus existent in the eternal association with the 7 absolutes of the infinite, of infinity, with the 7-fold infinity of the self-segmented phases of the self-realization, revealing I Am. These dual relationships eternalizing to the universe as the 7 absolutes eternalize the basic foundations for all universe reality.
So if you think about it, the I Am segmentates himself to make all these relationships, right? God the Father, relationship to God the Son. God the Father, relationship to the Infinite Spirit. God the Father, relationship to paradise. God the Father, relationship to the Deity Absolute. God the Father, relation to the unqualified Absolute. And finally, God the Father, his relationship to the Universal Absolute. And these are all what they call duality relationships, right? Because it involves both the I Am and a new being evolved or made from God the Father himself, right? And that's what makes the basis for all reality. Everything in the universe is based on this. All right? And this is another nice confusing one. Rodney, would you like to take this one?
Okay. Excuse me. It has been sometimes stated that unity begets duality, that duality begets triunity, and that triunity is the eternal ancestor of all things. There are, indeed, three great classes of primordial relationships, and they are
This is what brings it all together, y'all. Okay?
and they are one, unity relationships. Relations existent within the I am, as the unity thereof is conceived as a threefold and then as a sevenfold self-differentiation. 2. Duality relationships. Relations existent between the I am as sevenfold and the seven absolutes of infinity. And 3. Triunity relationships. These are the functional associations of the seven absolutes of infinity.
Okay. So what they start out is with the unity relationships, and that is the relationship of God the Father as I am, conceived as the threefold. What's the threefold? That would be God the Father and God the Spirit. And then as the sevenfold self-differentiation. So it goes from the threefold self-differentiation to a sevenfold self-differentiation, right? And that's what they call the unity relationships. It's all unity. All right, the duality relationships is the relationship existing between the I am as sevenfold altogether and the seven absolutes of infinity. So that's the duality. Got the I am a single relationship with each one of the absolutes, right? All right, and then we have the triunity relationships, and these are functional associations with all seven of the absolutes with each other. Okay? And that's why they say here at the beginning of this paragraph that unity begets duality. This is the way it happened. And then duality beget triunity, because that's the only way it can happen. All right? And these are the eternal ancestor of all things, and the first three primordial relationships of everything. Does that make it a little more clear? All right. Stephen, would you take the next one, please, sir?
Okay, but I got a question.
Go right ahead, Stephen.
Gonna go back about 2 or 3 paragraphs. Universal philosopher, who is that?
These are philosophers throughout all the universes, Stephen. These are beings just like us that has taken a sabbatical or a break to think about how all the universe is made and how all things fit together, basically. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Triunity relationship arises upon reality foundations because of the inevitability of absolute inner-association. Such triunity associations eternalize the potential of all reality. They encompass both deified and undeified reality.
You see how they encompass both deified and undeified? They encompass both things that deity is involved with, and then pattern reality, which is undeified reality, or the unqualified absolute. Right?
The I am is unqualified infinity as unity. The dualities eternalize reality foundations. Triunities eventuate the realization of infinity as universal function.
All right. basically to restate what they said before, that the I am is basically the infinity of unity, right? And then they go on to say that the dualities eternalize reality foundation. So all reality basically is founded on the dualities of these relationships. And the triunities eventuate the realization of infinity as universal function. In other words, these triunities come together to make the universe actually work, right? Because you have the movement of deity, the movement of non-deity and the unqualified absolute, and the matter and gravity association of paradise, right? Pre-existentials become existential in the seven absolute. The existentials become functional in the triunities. The basic association of absolutes, the concomitant with the eternalization of the triunities, the universe stage is set, the potentials are existent and the actuals are present, and the fullness of eternity witnesses the diversification of cosmic energy, what creates everything. Outspreading of paradise, spirit, and the endowment of mind, together with the bestowal of personality by virtue of all of these deity and the paradise derivatives, are unified in the experience on the creature level and by other techniques on the super creature level. So these things all come together, give us a potential of the future, all right? They diversify the cosmic energy so that we can create universes and beings and outspread the matter of paradise, the spirit of the sun, and the endowment of the mind, the third source and center, together with the bestowal of personality, come from the God the Father. And all of these comes from deity, and paradise derivatives are all put together in the experience at the creature level. And where does this experience go? Into the Supreme, God the Supreme. So they give us all this stuff to create us and put us where we are, and our experiences give back. It gives back experience to a new God, or a God the Supreme that has experienced everything with us. Okay? And then it moves us on from this creature level, our start, to the super creature level, which would be what? Naracha, right? And then spirit, and on to phenometry, the super creature level. Okay? All right, let me see where we are. I'm almost thinking I might ought to break this down into 3 sections on this paper. It's very important. Are y'all still with me? You want me to go on?
I'm right here.
Another section?
My head hurts, but that's okay.
Okay, we're going to plow on for at least one more
I'm
section.
here too.
All right, it's a lot to think about, I know. All right, let's move on to number 5. Millie, would you take on number 5?
Prolongation of finite reality. Just as the original diversification of the I am must be attributed to inherent and self-contained volition, so must the promulgation of finite reality be ascribed to the volitional acts of paradise deity and to the repercussional adjustments of the functional triunity.
So it's by the volition or the will of God, or the I am, and the acts of the paradise deities, right, in the 7 absolutes, they add this together, and the repercussion of this is a functional triunities. And the triunities is the base for all creation, right? All right, let's go on to another one. Robbie, would you take this one?
Okay, prior to the deitization of the finite, it would appear that our reality diversification took place on absolute levels. But the volitional act promulgating finite reality connotes the qualification of absoluteness and implies the appearance of relative
Okay,
relativities.
what are they talking about the deitization of the finite?
I don't know, Millie, what are they talking about?
Think about it. The deitization of the finite. That's finite beings. That's us. How do you think they deitize us? Think about it for a second. There's only one answer. Mythologist. That father fragment is deity. Okay? So when we fuse with the thought adjuster, at that point we have been what? Deitized, right? If that's a word. It's the deitization of the finite would be that moment when the finite merges with the deity, which would be us merging with the thought adjuster, right? All right.
Okay, then that could apply to what I was talking about last week. When we, with all of our heart, mind, and soul, choose to be obedient to the will of the Father, then that starts to form that connection and put us on that path.
That's correct. That's correct, Stephen. That's absolutely right. Any way you look at it, because when you give up your will for the will of the Father, you're reacting to the deity part of God the Father, the thought adjuster, and you're taking one step closer to the day of fusion with that thought adjuster. So by doing the will of God, doing what Jesus wants us to do, doing what the Spirit wants us to do, doing what God wants us to do, those are all steps to this deitization process. Okay? Okay, and then it goes on to tell us, but the volitional act, what volitional act are we talking about? We're talking about the volitional act of God, promulgating the finite reality. In other words, God puts His deity into the finite reality, gives us a qualification of absoluteness. It takes us from a finite being to a more absolute being, because it implies the appearance of relativeness of a changing person or a changing being into a deity-based and led being. Okay? And that's going to be important because we're going to go to 2 slides here and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. Let's go on to the next one. And I think you're up, Stephen, if I'm correct.
Okay. While we present this narrative as a sequence and portray the historic appearance of the finite as a direct derivative of the absolute, the superborn of mind, the transcendental, both preceded and succeeded all that is finite. Transcendental ultimates are, in relation to the finite, both casual and constellational.
Okay, so what they're saying here is before finite beings were involved, there were transcendentals involved. What are transcendentals? Transcendentals are the beings of paradise and the outer space levels. Okay? And they were here before finite beings were even created. Okay? Part of the transcendentals are the master force organizers and all their agents. Okay? They're not really finite beings. They're pre-finite beings. And this is a great slide that shows us this. Okay? If you think of paradise, the beings in paradise are absolute. They're both timeless and spaceless. Okay? The absolute beings are on the Havona level. Absonite beings. I say absolute? Yeah, I meant absonite beings. And they are time-space transcendent. In other words, they were here before us, they'll be here after us. They're the beings that live within the Havona rings and were created for the Havona rings. And then we come up with the 7 super-universe level, and that is the finite beings, which are time-space limited. Okay, so we're controlled by time and space, and that makes us finite beings. Does that make sense? Make it a little clearer? Okay, and this is where we live, right? This is paradise, right? If we go back one here, who lives there? The Absolute, right? If we go to the Havona, the Absonite, they live in the Havona rings, right? And then we have the 7 super-universe level, and that's all finite beings. Now, what do you think is going to be out here in this level? We don't really know. We know that the Transcendentals helped create this area, but would that necessarily mean they actually helped create our 7 super-universes too, right? But maybe that's why they call them transcendental. They transcended all the universes, right? But it's a mystery as to what types of beings will be out in these 4 outer space levels. Speculation is that is what all the beings that meet God the Father, that become infinite afterwards, that's going to be their job, is to go out in those 4 outer space levels and train and bring along whatever beings are going to be created out there. Right? What an adventure, we have out in front of us. It's just amazing. All right. Let's see. I think Rodney's. No, I skipped over Rodney, didn't I? Did I skip over you, Rodney?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then Diana's up.
Finite possibility is inherent in the infinite, but the transmutation of possibility to probability and inevitability must be attributed to the self-existent free will of the first source and center, activating as triunity associations. Only the infinity of the Father's will could ever have so qualified the absolute level of existence as to eventuate an ultimate or to create a finite.
Okay, so it was the volitional will of the first source and center, or God the Father, that made all the triunity associations, all the 7 absolutes, and in the infinity, the Father's will to qualify the absolute level, the level of us going into existence, and as to eventuate the ultimate or create a finite, either one. It spans the whole cosmos, and it's all from the will of God the Father.
It just says that basically relationships are so important.
Yeah, it is. With the appearance of relative and qualified reality, there comes into being a new cycle of reality, the growth cycle. A majestic downsweep from the heights of infinity to the domain of the finite, forever swinging inward to paradise and deity, always seeking those high destinies commensurate with the infinity source. So all this was started by God the Father, and we start out as finite, and we work our way through the 7 super universes, become spirit beings. We move on to Havona and all the billion worlds of Havona. Then we move on to paradise, where we recognize the infinite spirit, we recognize the eternal Son, and eventually stand before God the Father. Okay? And then at that point, we stand before God the Father, and we hope to hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And then at that point, we become finalators. Okay? So we're a more final type of being, right? Deity and non-deity combined, right? We started out as animals, we work our way up to deity. Okay? All right. Oops. Okay. I'm on the wrong slide here. Let's keep.
Did Diane just read?
No, I did. You're up next.
Okay, I'm up. These inconceivable transactions mark the beginning of universe history, mark the coming into existence of time itself. To a creature, the beginning of the finite is the basis of reality. As viewed by creature mind, there is no actuality conceivable prior to the finite. This new appearing finite reality exists in two original phases.
All right. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to move into those two phases. Okay. Rodney, would you take these?
Number one, primary maximums, the supremely perfect reality, the Havana type of universe and creature. Two, secondary maximums, the supremely perfected reality, the superuniverse type of creature and creation.
So we have two types of beings then, don't we? We have the primary maximums, which are the Havana type of universe and creatures, right? That's where we're all going. Then we have the secondary maximums, the supremely, see the key word here? Perfected reality. We earn our way up to perfection. And this is the super universe type of creature in creation. That's us. So we move through the universes, and as we move through the universes and into Havana, we become more and more perfect, and we become one of the secondary maximums, maximum perfection. And we interact with the primary maximums, which is the type in Havana or in paradise, right? All right. Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
All right. These then are the two original manifestations. The constitutivity, perfect, and evolutionary perfected. The two are co-coordinate in eternity relationship, but within the limits of time, they are seemingly different. Time factor means growth to that which grows. Secondary finite growth, hence, those that are growing must appear as incomplete in time. But these differences, which are so important this side of paradise, are non-existent in eternity.
So as we become more and more perfected, these things of growth stop when we get to paradise, right? Because we've met our maximum growth at that point, right? That's what they're talking about here, right? Rodney, would you take the next one? Oh, Rodney just read. I'm sorry. It's Diane.
We speak of the perfect and the perfected as primary and secondary maximums, but there is still another type. Trinitizing and other relationships between the primaries and secondaries result in the appearance of tertiary maximums, things, meanings, and values that are neither perfect nor perfected, yet are coordinate with both ancestral factors.
Okay, these are the tertiary maximums must be what we learn as being finalators, right? The next step in, okay? Y'all, I'm on slide 77, and we have 99. It's not that much to go. Do y'all want to stop here, or you want to go on?
Maybe we should stop.
Okay, we can do that. We can take this up next time. We won't have as much to cover next time. But I don't want to rush through this. I want to make sure everybody tries to understand it, right? Okay, so let's move one more slide. And Diane, would you close us in a prayer?
Okay. Oh, Father, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to learn and grow rapidly, time after time, hearing the same scripture from the revelations that you've given to us. And we are grateful and hopeful that we will continue to understand and to grow and be able to pass the information and knowledge on to others as we continue to have a deeper understanding of the way the universe works, the world unrolls. Just give you thanks and thank you for this wonderful revelation in the name of Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth, Michael Pegron, pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us from home. Please come see us again. We're going to wrap this up next time. Look for the video on the internet.